You transitioned from promising medical career to outback newsman to prolific Hollywood director of photography.
I don't ever want to walk onto a set and not know what I'm going to do, and I don't.
I would have argued with you far less had I known that. Hey everyone, it's Drew from Moonshine Post, coming to you from the vibrant city of Atlanta. At Moonshine, we're all about storytelling, collaboration, bringing visions to life, whether it's for the creative agencies, the big studios, or passionate indies. So come tell your story with us. Today, I'm thrilled to have someone I deeply respect, admire, and have had the privilege of working with on Creepshow seasons 1, 2, and 3. The incredibly talented Rob Draper. Rob's expertise as a director of photography is nothing short of remarkable, from Australian outback news shooter to East Coast television innovator to Hollywood cinematographer. Rob's journey has spanned continents and decades. Dive into his world with us as we discuss his experiences, his insights, and magic he brings to both TV and films. Let's roll. Welcome to the podcast, Rob. I'm glad to have you here.
Thanks, Drew. It's really nice to be here, mate.
It was great. No, you got to come over, and we actually talked through a movie that we're going to make together, which is awesome because I've wanted to make a movie with you. We did a TV series back in the day, 2 years ago.
Back in the day.
You've had an entire career before I met you. But yeah, I had a lot of questions about your approach to getting to that point where I first met you. Yeah, let's break into it. I did a lot of research with you. It was pretty easy to stalk you on the internet.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. One of the things that drew me to the beginning parts is that you became the accidental cinematographer. And originally...
you have done some research.
So, I mean, like, you transitioned... This is so weird. So we're going way back now. You transitioned from what I read, a promising medical career in Australia to outback newsman to prolific Hollywood director of photography.
Well, there you go. That's it. That's That's my entire career.
But like dubbing yourself the accidental cinematographer, like
I like that. I think accidental cinematographer is good. I'm going to use that from now on.
But like you had this other career start in this other country, and you picked up a camera, as I understand it, just for fun because camera technology in the camera.
Well, it wasn't for fun.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about photography, so it wasn't for fun. No, when I left school, I wanted to. I'd always wanted to do medicine, and I didn't get a good enough pass to get into a medical school, but I got a good enough pass to do dentistry, so I started doing dentistry, and. The funny thing is when I look back now, I realize that I used to spend all my days at the movies, going to watch movies, and I loved musicals. I watched Funny Girl and Sound of Music, and the first one I ever saw was Music Man, and the Music Man just blew my mind. There's still shots in that I think, I wonder how they did that. And I was only a kid. But I didn't realize that I love movies, and back then, there's getting into the movies was like, why would you even think about that? So off I went into dentistry, and after failing physics 3 times, they kicked me out. And so I went and worked in a pathology lab in a big hospital in Sydney, and then I followed my now wife of 50 years to Teachers College. In the outback, in a place called Wagga Wagga, and
can't make that up.
No, you can't. Well, Wagga is Aboriginal for crow, and so Wagga Wagga is many crows.
Okay,
so it's the land of many crows. Interesting bit of cocktail party tittle tattle for you. So I worked in this pathology lab, and my wife Sue was a top equestrian. And she did a lot of 3D eventing, and she wanted me to film her, riding so she could see where she was making mistakes and stuff like that. So, I thought, okay, well, I better buy a camera if I'm going to film her doing something. I knew nothing about it, so I researched, and there was a camera called a Canon Scopic, and I ordered it. And the day I went in to pick the camera up. It was $650, I think it was at the time. And this is like back in 1970, 1974, 4 or 5, something like that. There was a guy in there who was an ex-news cameraman, and he said, hang on, why are you buying that? He said, I've got a camera I can sell to you. It's called a Bolex, and it's got 3 lenses, and it uses 16 millimeter film, and I'll sell it to you for $350. And you can go out to the TV station and tell them you'll shoot part-time news, and you'll get free film and processing. And I thought, what a deal. So the funny thing was I was working in a private pathology lab, and the doctor who had an office at the front had a Bolex that he shot home movies on. And I was telling him about it, and he said, I'll bring the Bolex in, you can have a look at it. Because I said I wasn't too sure if I should buy it or not. And when he brought it in, I thought it was the coolest thing, the noise that made, and, winding the little camera up and flipping the turret. And it had a book, and it told you how to make movies. Make movies by going wide shot, medium shot, close up, close up, close up, medium shot, wide shot. And the story was get them into the story, get them out of the story. What could be simpler? The big challenge for me was going to be how to set the exposure, because I didn't know anything about cameras. All the people I worked with in the lab were real keen amateur photographers, and they'd buy a new lens and they'd come in and show me the lens. I was like, yeah, big deal, It's like, look at this, it does this and it does that, and it's got depth of field and blah, 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 all this stuff. And it was like, yeah, who cares? And so I knew nothing about it. So I didn't know how I was going to do this exposure thing. But Kodak were really smart. When they made rolls of 16 millimeter film, if you broke the box open, it had pictures. There was a guy with a bright sun, f16. A guy with the sun with a little bit of cloud, f11. Guy with sun with a lot of cloud, f8. Guy with the sun with cloud and rain, 5.6. What could be simpler? And I noticed that all those numbers were on the lens, so that's all I had to do. Take my little chart, change the lens, wide shot, medium shot, close up, close up, close up, medium shot, wide shot, and off I go. That's how
paint by numbers.
That's how I started. Yeah. So I decided I'd go out to the TV station and tell them I wanted to shoot part-time news. So I go out, and the station manager, his name was Richard Gray, and I knew nothing about television, nothing about anything. And, because I'd sort of spent 3 years with my finger in people's mouths. And so he said, so how much have you shot? And I said, I've shot a lot, probably close to 1,000 feet of film I've shot. And he goes, wow, 1,000 feet. And I said, yeah, at least. Yeah. I said, I don't think I'm over 1,000 feet, just a bit under it. And he goes, oh, wow, that's impressive. Because little did I know, the network guys are shooting 400 feet of film on every news story they do. And they're doing 3 or 4 news stories a day. But I didn't know that. Anyway, he said, look, I'll tell you what, I'll give you 100 feet of film. It's in colour. Do you think you can handle that? And I go, yeah, it should be okay. And he said, I want you to film the Prime Minister arriving at the local airport for a function on the weekend. And he said, and there's a swimming carnival on the Sunday. I want you to film a story on that. And he said, you've got 100 feet of film, and so 50 feet on each story. And I go, yeah, okay, no problem. He said, the other thing is we edit in camera. So you've got to try to edit in camera. And I said, oh, yeah, okay, no problem. And so, I didn't have the internet then, so I couldn't go home and go, edit in camera, what the hell does that mean? So I had to call all the people I knew and go, have you ever heard of a thing called edit in camera? They go, no, don't know what that is. So anyway, I worked that out. But I went out to the airport and got my little Kodak chart out. And it was a bright sunny day, so f16. And the Prime Minister arrived. And I thought wide shot, medium shot, close up, close up, close up. So the wide lens was 16 mil. So I put it on 16 mil, but I had no idea of how close I was to people. So as the Prime Minister, it was a little plane, as he came down the steps, there's no security or anything. This is like 1976. He walked off and he saw me there and he's waving like this. Next thing, I bumped into him because I was so close. And I said, "Oh, God, sorry about that." And he goes, "Oh, that's all right. Are you okay?" And I go, "Oh, yeah, yeah. Hey, would you mind getting back on the plane and coming off again?" And I'll stand back a little bit. He goes, "Yeah, sure, mate, no problem." So he climbs back. Gough Whitlam was his name. He climbs back up onto the plane, he and his wife. They came down off the plane and waved again. And because when I showed it to the guys at the news station, the TV station, going, "Oh my God, that's fantastic. It was so good." And he's waving and all this sort of stuff. And then I shot the Swimming Carnival, wide shot, medium shot, close up, close up, close up. And so I got a job as a part-time stringer. That's how I started.
First time.
It was a long story, but yeah.
But first assignment, bumping into the Prime Minister.
Yeah, why not? That's how you learn what wide-angle lenses do.
Did they send you out with like a correspondent for the festival? Okay.
I was the correspondent.
Okay.
No, actually, I did. I shot part-time as a stringer, and I would shoot all the stuff, and I, I was trying to edit in cameras so hard, and it was silent. We had no audio, so it was just silent. I was shooting on either an Eclair NPR or the Bolex.
But editing camera in film terms is like stop is cut.
Well, I tell you,
next shot is edit.
I tell you why.
Too.
I tell you why they did it was because the thing was on the Bolex there were no flash frames. On the Eclair NPR there were flash frames, so they had to be cut out. But on the Bolex, it was a hard stop. So you could edit in camera and just the news editor would literally go, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 seconds, cut. Okay, that's that story, 10 seconds slug, and off it'd go. And that's how it was going to air. And I got upset because I thought, gee, some of my best shots aren't getting in the news. So I called him up and I said, "Would you mind if I came out on Mondays?" Because I'd shoot Saturday and Sunday, and that wouldn't go to air until Monday. And because they didn't have weekend news service. And so I said, "Would you mind if I came out and edited the stuff that I shoot?" And they said, "Well, we'll ask the senior cameraman to see what he thinks." And he said he was happy because he said, "Yeah, that's less stuff I've got to edit. So yeah, if you want to come out and do it." So I started doing it, and all of a sudden their ratings started going up on the news because the shots were better and the storytelling was a little bit better. And eventually they offered me a job as a full-time news cameraman, but I was one-man band.
What was it about the actual filming process that made you go into cinematography and not go the story editing route or the the interview route? I mean, there's so many different facets of actually the news cycle that you were covering in terms of storytelling.
Well, I enjoyed the visual part of it. The visual part of it sort of really appealed to me. And when we eventually started using single system sound, I'd go out with the newsreader. Then I'd still have to chase up the story and do most of the questions, but the newsreader would come out with me and then we were doing stuff. So it was more. He was more the guy getting the news. I was more worried about the visuals, and I enjoyed the visual side of it more than the other part.
And so at what point does, you're objectively, kind of like what you're saying, is like objectively you're gathering the facts, getting the news, getting the stories, gravitating towards the image that you're creating. At what part do you transition into the subjective storytelling of the imagery? Was it through documentaries first?
Well, doing news, the thing for me with news was my goal was to try to tell the story without any sound. So that was always my goal. Try to make the images so compelling and the editing so compelling that it told the story without a newsreader being there. So you could watch a 30-second clip and you would know what the story was, with no voiceover or no intro. And so that was my goal. And one of the things I realized early on was if you want to be able to do that, you really have to know how to edit, because you can shoot all the greatest pictures in the world, but if you don't know how to cut them together, then it's not going to work. So I bought book after book after book after book on film editing, and I went and saw old movies and went to every film festival I could go to and just watch stuff to see how things were done, how stories were told. And that's how I cut the news. So I was cutting the news like as if it was narrative film, really.
Yeah.
To me, cinematography wasn't just about lighting and lens choice and cameras and all that sort of stuff. It was as much about editing as it was about the actual cinematography. And so I spent a lot of time understanding the editing process so that I could be a better cinematographer.
It all makes sense now on the set of Creepshow. I would have argued with you far less had I known that. That's
Did we
amazing.
argue? We didn't argue, did we?
Not really.
No.
No, we were making decisions and finding solutions together.
Exactly.
No, that's fascinating. You approached it from what makes a story, the juxtaposition of the frames that you were capturing.
Yeah. Well, and really that came from all the books I was reading, because back then there were no film schools. I mean, film school didn't exist.
Yeah, so you made the move over stateside, and you were already rubbing elbows with these great cinematographers. But your stock and trade at that point was still news and commercials.
Yeah.
And
documentaries.
Okay. What was the turning? Like, how did you get to Tales from the Darkside, which was required viewing, by the way, for all of the Creepshow editors here at Moonshine? Because that's a monumental leap forward into DOP narrative storytelling.
When I came over here through the main photographic workshops, I met two guys, Aaron Mavakian and Ralph Rosenblum. And Ralph Rosenblum was Woody Allen's editor, and he cut Annie Hall and he did 1,000 Clowns, and he did The Pawnbroker, and he was one of the top editors in the world. And Aaron was a top director, but Ralph worked at Columbia University in filmmaking, and Aaron was the dean of the school at SUNY Purchase. So when I first came over here, Aaron used to say, well, come down to New York and you can hang out in New York and go and meet people, and you can stay at my apartment. And he lived on 86th Street, had a massive apartment. And so I used to do that. But Aaron knew a UPM, and she had heard about Tales from the Darkside. And she said, I can get you an interview with the producer on Tales from the Darkside. And the producer was a guy by the name of Bill Teitler. So I went in and showed them some of the stuff that I'd done. I went in on a recommendation from Brooke Kennedy and from Aram, and they liked what they saw and liked what they heard. And so they said, well, tell you what we'll do. We'll put you on episode 1 and we'll check the dailies out. And if we like the dailies, then we'll put you on for the series. And if we don't, she's Kaputski. And I said, okay, that's great. And that's how I got it. And I tell you, the week before the first day on that show, I don't think I slept. I think I went about 9 days without sleeping. The first day I turned up, I was exhausted. But I tell you what, I was prepped because the one thing I knew is if I go in to do this, I don't want this to be a one day wonder. I want to get this show. And so after the first, they were going to wait 3 days, and after the first day's dailies, they said, "Okay, you're on." And so it was great. Yeah.
So how did you arrive at your style for that movie? I mean, I know that you were experimenting in the background with the subtleties of exposure back in the newsroom, based on the technical parameters you were given, but you were realizing, okay, what I can do with these cameras and just pushing it even in the news stories. How did you arrive at what you wanted to bring to the table for that series?
For Tales from the Darkside? Well, there were two things at play there. One of them was I just wanted to make sure I got the damn thing done. But I still wanted to create something, and so all of that plus my looking at Rembrandts and Caravaggios and artwork all sort of led to it. But there were some really tight parameters on Tales from the Darkside that we had to stick to, and to be really honest, the absolute best thing that could have ever happened for me was getting Tales from the Darkside, because I learned more about cinematography on that show than I've learned anywhere else, because they had the rules they had were it had to be shot on 100 ASA negative. You had to shoot it at a T4. There were no exceptions. You couldn't shoot wide open. Everything had to be lit with hard light. You were not allowed to use soft light. And you had to have the entire show pre-lit on the Friday before you shot it. So you had 12 hours to pre-light the show. And then you did, on Monday and Tuesday, you worked with the director to work out a shot list, and you were allowed 100 shots with 20 optionals. If you're ahead of schedule, you could bring in the other optional shots at the rate of 5 a day, because it was a 4-day shoot. If you were behind schedule, the optionals couldn't be brought in. And if you were way behind schedules, then you had to redo your shot list. But all those parameters meant that when you went into each show, you were so well prepped. I mean, I used to think, boy, this is so restrictive. You know, you've got no creative freedom at all. But within that, it taught me a lot of stuff about shooting for TV, because TV is all about parameters, for time and budget. You know, and people used to say, time, money, quality, you can pick two. And I always disagreed with that. I said, time, money, quality, pick three, because there's no reason one of those disqualifies any of the others. As long as you know how to manage all three things, you can deliver something on time, you can deliver it on budget, and you can deliver really good quality, as long as you know how to manipulate the parameters. And that's what I learned on Tales from the Darkside. It was like, there are different ways to skin a cat, and you go, okay, and it was the best learning experience ever. And without Tales from the Darkside, when I moved into doing TV movies, I drew a lot on my experience from Tales from the Darkside, and doing that, because that was where you learned all the basics. It was fantastic film school, it really was.
Learning on the job. Yeah, we have a saying here, or we have kind of an approach here. It's like, okay, just define the size of the box. Yeah, we're gonna fill it up, and then we're gonna try and break out of it. Yeah. And so, but without that, we don't really know the constraints. But once we do, I mean, we have as much fun as we possibly can in the edit.
Yeah. Well, it was basically the same thing on Creepshow. It was a set of parameters. You're given a set of parameters, and you've got to work within those parameters and deliver.
I'm seeing the playbook fall into view here for Creepshow, 100%. Yeah. We'll jump in there. Actually, that's fun. But Creepshow isn't your average TV show. So, I mean, there's a lot. Obviously, you have an entire career before we get to Creepshow at this point, filled with features and other series. But the approach to Creepshow is insane to me, because it's 12 mini movies in a season that are like taking place across genres, epochs, subgenres, time periods. You got Parisian World War II werewolves. You got Lovecraftian, modern madness movie. You've got a haunted contemporary child's dollhouse, and then a 70s TV studio a la Sam Raimi. How do you prepare for that, knowing that we're not going to have the same sets to return to? These aren't going to be, you have the visual themes that we got imparted by, the continuation of the film that we're, homaging, but how do you prepare for making a different creature feature every other day?
Every 3.5 days.
There you go.
Yeah. To me, that's I didn't see that as being inhibiting. I found it as a challenge, because my big thing is all about prep. I spend an enormous amount of time in prep, and I don't ever want to walk onto a set and not know what I'm going to do, and I don't do that. Every day when I turn up for work, I know exactly what I'm going to do. Now, does that mean I do it? Not necessarily. I make changes, but they're creative choices. They're not. I'm not walking on set trying to work out how to achieve the day's goals. I walk on set knowing how I'm going to achieve the day's goals, and then what I do is that builds in time to be creative. Because if you walk on set and you go, okay, how am I going to light this scene? You take up all your time working out how you're going to light it. But if I go in knowing how I'm going to light it, while the guys are putting up the lights and moving the cameras in position, I can be sitting back going, oh, hang on, I can tweak this, I can tweak that, I can move this, do this over here, put that over there, da, 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 da. And all of a sudden now I'm being creative. But what I've done is I've built that into the constraints of time, budget, and quality. So I can improve the quality. And I know every day I can make the quality better. And I've just got to make sure I fit within the constraints of time and budget.
The bag of tricks that you brought to Creepshow was something special to prepare for having to cross all those genres and subgenres. And I mean, you obviously, like I said, it's not, in the film world, you're going as big as you possibly can because you can, with your director. But in the series, like you said, it's what are the parameters, what are the constraints? But you had all the constraints of a normal TV show, except the fact that you still had to then make a different movie every 3 days.
Yeah, well, but one of the challenges in it was that you had 3.5 days to shoot half hour basically, and a normal half hour TV show would be 5 or 6 days. So you've automatically lost a day and a half, to 2 days off your schedule. So you've got to work so fast to create it. And there are times where, I would look at it and I'd go, okay, I want to do, like for example, in the one we did in black and white with John Harrison. There were things I wanted to do there that I knew I wouldn't be able to do in terms of lighting because I really wanted that to have a real true film noir look. So what I had to do was work out how can I light all those scenes and give it a true film noir look and still fit within those parameters? Because the one thing to me is, if I don't deliver all three things, I've failed, and I don't like failing. So I had to make sure I could deliver all three things, and so I had to modify the way I was doing things on some of those shows to make sure. I achieved the look I wanted and the look that I told the director I was going to go for, and I would still fit within the box.
Yeah, but every episode almost pretty much was a new look.
Oh yeah, well it was, and like I said, that was the challenge, was to not do it the same, and not having standing sets with standing lighting was, to me, I didn't care. I prefer that. The thing with Creepshow was, really in 3 seasons we did 36 half-hour episodes, and I think every one of them looks different. So,
yeah,
and that was as much you guys as it was me, because the whole thing was a collaboration.
Yeah, I mean, I've never experienced a show like it. It's the most fun I've ever had making TV or being scared, just because of that creative shorthand that we got to have. Beyond just the production meetings, like being there on set with you and interpreting the creative from Greg, and then actually seeing what you were going for, then knowing that, all right, the next day I'm going to go do this battle, in the edit bay, and tell a different story the next day, and then cross genres. It was kind of a mind warp in a lot of ways, because different editors were having to hand off different pieces to other editors, and we were smashing them all. We were making episodes with 2 different stories juxtaposed together. It was
and the thing that was good was when Greg wanted to do the creature from the Black Lagoon, when we got to shoot that, we were way behind schedule. And everyone was pushing. We got to shoot this fast. We got to shoot it. And it was like, yeah, we got to shoot it fast, but I want this to look like Creature from the Black Lagoon, which is very specific lighting style. And so I had to make sure that I could give myself the time to do that, to get that lighting right. But the big thing with the Creature from the Black Lagoon versus a dead girl named Sue
There
was,
you
yeah, was that Dead Girl Named Sue was true film noir. And Harrison and I love doing film noir. So the first question John ever asked me, he called me up from LA when we were doing an episode of Tales from the Darkside together. And the first words out of his mouth was, "What do you think about film noir?" And I was like, "Oh man, you're talking my language." He said, "Okay, this is great." But the good thing about the Creature from the Black Lagoon opening segment and Dead Girl Named Sue is they were cut differently, and they were cut in the style of each of those shows, and I thought that was awesome because they both demanded a different type of editing because the Creature from the Black Lagoon was almost proscenium, black and white, which is the way they used to shoot back then. You know, they just had a one-wall set and everything was proscenium. And the Dead Girl Named Sue was true film noir. So that was as much, you know, what you guys did as well because and as a cinematographer, when I saw them, I was like, oh, this is awesome. They're cut the way they should be cut too. It wasn't just, you know, snip, 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 snip. They were cut with style, so that was good.
I mean, obviously, we would have our tone meetings, right? And so, but the editors would take the time to hear what Greg was going for in terms of tone. We'd have to shift. Yeah, we know that you would have to go adapt your cinematography to match whatever time period we were in. And we'd have to go then study that and then actually adapt our. It is mostly kind of an invisible art form behind the scenes of putting it together, where you're actually pressing the look into the physical medium. But that's some of the best collaboration we've ever done. Some of the most fun, at least.
It was good fun.
Yeah. You've mentioned a few times drawing inspiration from these artists like Turner, Andrew Wyeth. You've also had the man who painted the Outback, whose name I forgot, Roberts?
Oh, Tom Roberts, yeah.
Yeah. So how do these influences manifest in your work?
Well, there's a whole lot of them. It's like if I'm doing an interior and some exteriors as well, then, you know, in the back of my mind, I'm seeing Rembrandt and Caravaggio. If I'm doing exteriors, I'm seeing Albert Bierstadt, who did the American West. I'm seeing Constable. I'm seeing Gainsborough. And framing shots, Edward Hopper. There's all these sort of things that are just floating around in the back of my mind. But if I had my way, I would shoot everything like a Turner painting, where there's no clear point of focus. Everything's just a swirl of texture and color, but you get the image of and you get the impression of what he's trying to convey. So that's how I would shoot everything if I could. If you shot a movie like that, no one would watch it.
Was that culminating even in the early stages of doing news?
No.
Or documentary?
Not really. It was. It's sometimes in documentary. In documentary, I was more interested in getting killer shots, and what I realize now, and I realize especially now, cinematography has become about getting killer shots, and not about telling stories. And you look at some of the cinematography now, and it's incredible. I mean, some of the shots are just absolutely mind-blowingly good. But you put them all together, and it's like it's just a collection of great shots. And you got DPs putting all their stuff up, you know, putting their favorite shots up on on YouTube and Instagram and all the rest of it, and that's great. But when you put all those great shots together, there's no rhythm and there's no real story. And I'm finding that cinematography sort of, the quality of the images is going through the roof. The quality of the storytelling's down the gurgler, because it's not about. And it took me quite a few years doing docos to realise it's not about doing the best shots in the world, because you look at some films that are really have terrible lighting, but they're great stories. And so and it's the shots and the storytelling and the editing and the performances and the script that make the story. And the cinematography is just an adjunct to that. It's not about the cinematography, it's about the overall package. So
Don't tell the other guys that.
it took me quite a while to get to the point where you realize that every shot doesn't have to be a Rembrandt or a Caravaggio, as long as over the entire run of the film, you've created a story that flows. And so, that's why, I try to structure lighting and lenses as if it's like a symphony, as if it's an orchestral piece. So it's like Beethoven, there's a quiet bit, a loud bit, a quiet bit, a loud bit, a quiet bit. So it's not all flat. And sometimes you can't do that. And then when you're shooting 3.5 day, half-hour episode, it's really hard to do that. But that's still my goal.
Talk to me about the shift from film to video. I mean, that must have been pretty significant for many of the cinematographers of your generation. How did that challenge any of the principles that you had built your career on with filmmaking, with celluloid, or did it offer any creative liberation?
To be honest, I say to people, I don't care what I shoot on. I don't care if I shoot on film, if I shoot on video, if I shoot digital, I shoot on an iPhone. I'll shoot on whatever. You tell me what I've got to shoot on, if it's going to be like that, and I'll shoot on it, because I don't care. It's all about parameters. If I know the parameters of a film stock, I can make that film stock do what I want. If I know the parameters of a video camera, I can make that do what I want. If I know the parameters of a digital camera, I can make that do what I want. And know the parameters of an iPhone, same with that. So I don't care, because all these guys who say, "Oh, I have to shoot on film," it's like, okay, whatever. It's like I started on 16mm black and white, went to 16mm color, went to sound on film, went from reversal to negative. And then I was shooting news right at the time when the big ENG revolution hit. And the big camera at the time was a TK-76 tube camera. I loved that camera. I thought it was awesome. Everyone complained and bitched and moaned, and I still hear guys who used it complaining about it. I mean, you had this huge camera that weighed about 20 pound. It had a coily cable that went out to a battery that you had to have strapped around your waist, and a big coaxial cable that came out of the back and went to a record deck that you had to carry in a backpack. And the record deck weighed about 45 pound. And that was portable cinematography. But I loved that camera. And once I learnt the parameters of the camera, I was getting fantastic images out of it. So I didn't care. And I just took what I knew from film and applied it to video. It was like, and I pushed the overexposure and I pushed underexposure and I did all the things, stretched it as far as I possibly could. And the same thing, the engineer used to say, you can't do that. And I go, well, it looks good on the monitor, so hey, that's what I'm doing. But in terms of creativity, I don't ever want to go back to film. If I never see film again, it'll be fine, because I have so much more creative control over a digital image than I had over film. And even stuff like we did on Creepshow, where I could do a quick color grade at home and then send it up here to JP, and JP could look at it and knew exactly what I was after, instead of this arbitrary, well, I'm trying to go for that sort of warm orangey, yellowy, browny, and no one really knows, oh, I want a gold colour. Well, gold to some people is yellow and gold to others is orange and gold to some people is brown. So now with digital, I can do all that stuff and be really accurate with the notes that I'm giving people.
Yeah, I'm going to hit digital stuff because I really loved you going into your tent, coming up with a look, and then coming back out and like sharing with it. It's like, okay, I know exactly what you're going for. Like the quickness and the shorthand that we were able to run on that show was amazing for us.
Well, let me say something about the tent.
Okay.
Because I have my own, and I don't call it a DIT card, I call it a cinematographer's card. Because when HD came out and I was teaching all these workshops for Sony, everyone kept saying, oh, we're going to need a digital engineer, an engineer to come out and do all this work. And I said, well, no, you don't need an engineer. You just need cinematographers who've got to learn that stuff. That's part of what you've got to learn as a DP. And because everyone was going, oh, no, I don't want to have to learn all that stuff. That's for an engineer. And I said to them, there's going to be a class of guy come out who's going to do all that stuff. He's going to take your job from you. And that's exactly what's happening, DIT. And some DITs are great. Some DITs think they do it all. But I built my own cart so I could do it myself. Now, I don't do all the things that a DIT does, but I have total 100% control over the image that I'm creating. And the advantage to me with that is that you and I can communicate. And we had fantastic communication on Creepshow, and especially with JP. So everyone knows there's no guesswork in what we're doing, and I can manipulate it. And I can also show the director, and using Resolve Live on set, and I can show the director exactly what I'm going for, and it makes directors really comfortable because there's no guesswork in it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed you having that tent, which was basically your mad scientist laboratory on set.
Well, it was good with COVID because no one was allowed in there, so that was really good.
Right. But step into my lab, I'd walk in there, I'd take a look and be like, okay, yeah, I know exactly how that's going to come in.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're looking for, in the edit bay, the syntax that you're building with the varying
syntax,
shots.
I like that. Oh, very good.
We're trying to interpret how can we make that character's journey in that scene work? Like, how can we ride the waves? I mean, that is story. And we want to be in a different place from where we started, or at least we want to put the obstacles in the way, and we want to feel that emotion. And we can only do that through the arrangement of A, B equals C, or make that part up sometimes. But yeah, we have to rely on the fundamentals that you're giving us within the imagery so that we can punctuate that syntax. Otherwise the characters, it's just it's a scene. I walk from this side of the room to this side of the room. But when we have the modulation from our end, I mean, that's where we live and die.
The important thing as a DP, I think, is to understand how the film's going to be cut together, because it's sort of, at the moment, it's like DP shoots it and then it goes off to post-production. Something happens and someone cuts it all up, and then there's the film. But and this happens a lot with John Harrison. When John and I work together, we structure transitions from one scene to another. We structure lens choices. We structure the whole thing so that we've got a really clear understanding of how it's all going to be shot, but also how it's all going to be cut together. Because we want to make sure that the transitions from one scene to another, the lenses work. Because quite often you'll see now there'll be a 18 millimeter shot, outgoing shot, and an 18 millimeter incoming shot, and it's sort of a little bit jarring. And what I find sometimes is, when you're sitting in a movie theater and you're watching the film and it's going along, and all of a sudden you go, whoa, and you feel like you're sitting in a movie theater and you're not in the film. Why does that happen? The reason it happens is because someone made a mistake. There was a mistake in the editing, the lighting, the sound, something happened up on the screen that popped you right out of the picture. And then you go, oh God, I've got to get back into it. And then you sort of feel yourself get sucked back in. And things like that, two 18mm lens shots butting up against each other may not work. So you've got to make sure that whatever lens choices you're doing on the outgoing shot are going to match on the incoming shot, which means you've got to have a bit of an understanding of how the thing's going to be cut together.
What's the Rob Draper look?
Everything's a swirl of color, texture, no shape or form, nothing in focus. If I could shoot like that, I'd be such a happy camper. No, I really would. Turner paintings. Look at a Turner painting. That's if I could do that, that would be just Jim Dandy as far as I'm concerned.
Turner painting within the parameters of T4 only and hard light only. There you go.
Exactly. Yeah, not much hard light in Turner paintings, but I'd like to use different f-stops.
You seem to be this constant learner and adapting to the technology so that you can still be the storyteller. And now I know, or at least I heard, that you're building a mobile volume on a truck. So this is
not really in a truck, but
well,
it'll travel in a truck.
Okay. I mean, so like you see it as your responsibility to learn these new tools. I mean, it's still. How is your craft evolving, and why do you feel compelled to now work with the volume?
I went to NAB this year.
Me too.
And
you saw JP.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. and I went to quite a few of the demos on different volumes that people had there. And I tell you honestly, my take on virtual production. I don't think it's a new way of shooting movies. Is it revolutionary? Yeah, sort of. I mean, it's just revolutionary to people who don't know that you can do rear screen projection or front screen projection or green screen or blue screen. It's revolutionary because you don't have to go on location. Does it work great? Yeah, works great. But I think it's just a tool. I don't see it dramatically changing the way we shoot movies.
No, I see it giving us access to things more quickly.
And access to things that we couldn't have. Like if you want to shoot a scene at Ephesus in Turkey, you can do that on a volume without taking the whole company to Turkey. The film that we're about to work on, we've got to shoot some of the stuff in Beirut. And so we can use a volume for that.
Yeah, so you've collected a lot of wisdom forged through trials. Reflecting on your journey, what's a piece of wisdom that you could pass along to storytellers and cinematographers?
The best advice I can give to anyone who wants to be a cinematographer is shoot documentaries. And I tell everyone that in all the workshops I teach, that if you really want to learn cinematography, spend 2, 3, 4 years shooting nothing but documentaries, because that's where you learn the craft. You're a one-man band generally. You've got no crew or very little crew. You're confronted with every type of condition, every type of lighting. You've got to be really fleet of foot to be able to shoot a documentary. And to be honest, the number of times where I've had to draw on my documentary experience when shooting narrative film is unbelievable. The industry's changing and the roles are changing, and I see the role of the DP changing enormously in the next couple of years. And I tell a lot of people that I don't think there'll be DPs very soon. They won't. They might still be called DPs, but it won't really be DPs because people are starting to look at it, and especially young producers who are coming out and they're saying, well, why do we need that person? And DPs is sort of their own worst enemy because once upon a time it was a little bit mystical what we did. You walked around and people used to say to me, oh, you must have been excited when you saw dailies. And you go, why? They go, well, you know, they look fantastic. And you go, yeah, I know, because that's the way I lit it. I lit it so it would look like that. And they go, but weren't you excited? And they go, well, no, because that's my job. You know, my job is to understand all the film stocks and know that when the dailies come out, that's what it's going to look like. So it's not like some sort of magic, which most people thought it was. But now that everyone can see, 4K, 6K, 8K, 12K images on set, that sort of magic is gone, and DPs are letting it slowly slip through their fingers. A lot of DPs don't use light meters; they light off monitors. I make sure I always use a light meter because I'm not just sitting in my tent twiddling knobs, because a lot of producers are going, well, hang on, can't the DOT do that stuff? And the gaffer does the lighting, and the assistant does the focus, and the operator does the operating. Why do we need DP? And people go, well, there's always going to be DP. And it's like, I've seen a lot of changes in this industry over 50 years, and trust me, there is a time coming where people are going to go, we don't need that guy. We can do it without him. And it'll all come down to the old buckaroos.
Well, this is awesome, man. This has been great to catch up with you. I am truly excited to actually make a movie with you. I know the whole team is. So I can't wait to dig into that. And we'll do another podcast after that and talk about that film.
Yeah, we'll do a Hello Beautiful podcast.
That'd be great.
And it'll be fantastic, and we'll have a few beers.
Yeah, well, much more
what sort
relaxed.
of podcast is this where you don't have beer?
Why is this the Moonshine podcast without moonshine?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, that's great. And that's a wrap with the brilliant Rob Draper, from his early days in Wagga Wagga, Australia, to his groundbreaking work in the heart of Hollywood. Rob's passion for storytelling through the visuals is truly inspiring. His dedication to innovation and his ability to adapt and evolve with the ever-changing world of cinematography is a testament to his craft. And for those eager to delve deeper into his work, check him out on his website at robdraperacs.com. That's ROBDRAPERACS.com, and his impressive list of credits on IMDb. As always, keep those creative juices flowing, and remember, stay sharp, stay friendly, and never stop creating. Moonshine, signing off.